You know my story, right? Rise to fame from the pain and glory.
Andrew Kisler. Most people know me by Kisler, unless you're like an old lady, an ex, or my family. But and then my business is Blunt Force Trauma Inc. It was originally going to be Blunt Force Trauma Games because I love video game design in high school, but I don't know, I found I'd much rather just do the art side of things than actually try video game design. And I don't know, I've had the name in my head since high school when I had a concussion. So I guess when it comes to art, I've always had an interest. Like I've always been drawing, like ever since I was a little kid, and I saw like dinosaurs or dragons or like, I mean, science fiction, fantasy, all of that type of stuff.
Nice.
You know, I grew up loving. But it wasn't until like, probably, I'm 25 now, so probably until I was like 22, I felt comfortable using the word artist for myself in any sense, because I had this idea in my head, art by itself is meaningless, you know, and on some level I still somewhat believe that there should be a story with art, there should be meaning behind art, there should be something personal and like that kind of either guts you or makes you feel something. But with that, at the same time, I had in my head, oh, it could be for video game design, it could be for movies, it could be for this, it could be for that. But if it's just an expression of myself, that's kind of valueless. That's what I have felt like for a long time. So it wasn't until like, you know, I moved out of the house and started going to college, and probably like 21, 22 was when I started being like, no, this itself is the only thing that feels right when I do it.
When you started, how were you, when you started out real young, I mean, real back to when you were doing that, what sort of, were you always in, were you in charcoal? Was it sketch with pencil? What sort of mediums were you into then?
So it was always pencil and ink. I've always loved the clarity of ink, and I think a big part of it's I grew up looking at like fantasy and sci-fi books that were all digitally done, or it was like old school like historical illustrations, like either woodcut stuff or like, and I just always felt drawn to it. And so like for me it was always pencil then pen, or pen just by itself. And like every now and then I'd mess around with like painting and stuff, but like pen and pencil are king to me.
Do you also use language at all? Do you write creative writing or anything like that, or is it strictly in expressing an illustration?
Yes, so I'm looking to get back into that more. I've been, especially for the past year, like kind of going balls to the wall when it comes to art, purely, but yeah, I've always enjoyed writing, whether it was like so this is a big part of my upbringing, but I grew up a pastor's kid. And my parents are my parents, and I love them, thankful for them. But I grew up thinking I had to make a Christian version of everything. So I tried writing my own Christian sci-fi. It would have been a gutless Warhammer 40K. Or space monks fighting space demons. Convergent evolution. That, or I'd write just characters, or I've tried working multiple times on a comic. I'm planning on finishing my first one August. But yeah, creative writing has always been a thing for me because I think it gives a counterbalance, and it helps expand the world you're trying to make in illustration.
Were you, when you were doing the creative writing and doing the illustration, do you overlap them into graphic novel styles at all or anything like that? Or like as far as storyboards and storylines?
Yeah, 100%. That, and like when it came down to it in high school, I once again was obsessed with Warhammer 40K, and I was trying to write my own faction for it, like homebrew faction, and I still have, if I go deep enough in my Google Drives, there is like 5 pages of rules, that I wrote for like each individual thing, character write-ups. There's, faction politics and dynamics and lore and all this different stuff. It's never going to see the light of day, but
maybe it will.
yeah, you never know. But So that storyboarding graphic art style has always been huge for me. And in fact, like whether it's like old D&D source books or Warhammer reference books or any of that, and I don't have a whole lot of comics in my collection, but the ones I do, like I have a copy of The Watchmen, I have a Patrick Kinlan comic, Frontiersman, an old Beast Wars comic, and like this one random, I think it was a one-off character, Propeller Man.
Okay.
Which I don't know, I just found it. That, I think there's like I think it's not Rob Halford, his name is slipping my mind, but he was like kind of like the classic 90s edgy comic guy, and it's like in that like style with like the weird cyborgs, and it's like cyborgs versus vampires for no reason.
I wonder if it was like we had this late night series cartoon. It was like for adults or whatever, but it was for kids. But and when I'm 39, and so this was on MTV, and it was called I don't remember what it's called, Heads or Mad Max or Max.
Oh, the Max?
The Max.
Oh, so I have a copy of that too.
Yeah.
Yes. And I love the Max. I only have like the first issue of it, but I want to read the full thing because that, I mean, like it's partially what I've been around, but like, I don't know, it's kind of edgy, but to me it just rings real, and it's confusing.
And the style reminds me of yours, that very detailed etching, you know what I mean? Like that's that style as well. And there was another series that when you said Propeller Man, it reminded me, because you have to look it up, it's around the same time that Max was on. And then it was a series of like dysfunctional injured people, but it was like one guy had like a lawnmower blade through his head, and it reminded me of that. And then like all these people had weird accidents, but they turned them into superpowers. I forget what it was called. Yeah, if you go on IMDb and check out like 90s cartoons on MTV, it'll be on there.
Definitely, I'll have to check that out.
But that's the same style as well. It's back to that like edgy, shaky kind of style. And that was like a big thing in the 90s as well, like you said, in the cartoons. Like Comedy Central had a bunch of those as well, where it would like shake, where it looked like it shake, and everything like that.
Yeah, and there's a bunch like another huge influence for me is like animated music videos, like the Todd McFarlane, like Girls in One, The Evolution. There's Concrete Jungle, I think that's Black Label Society. The Gorillas, that, and just YouTube animated shorts in general, like just because it broke down the line work and it showed a form of motion that like I want to try to capture that in the still image.
Right. And now, could you ever partner with somebody on the tech side of things and animate your still image stuff too? Like you could partner with people and collaborate? Definitely,
and there's a couple animators I know that I would, I'm looking at. Right now I have enough projects on my plate that a friend that's kind of helped me like manage things, she chewed me out the last time we hung out because she's like, Kisler, why do you do this to yourself? You don't have to suffer. I'm like, yes, I do.
so that'll take me back to the life tree. So let's take me through like, so you're finishing up high school, let's say right now in your time in your life, not right now, but literally let's take you there. You're finishing up high school. Did you ever see art as becoming something that was more than just a passion project and could be a viable business for you? Or what year did that begin to transpire and evolve?
Honestly, only in the past year.
Okay, wow, nice.
Because
that's why you're saying yes to everything. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Like I have to say yes to everything because I view it as I'm not too good for any project. I mean, you know, I've been working a lot with musicians, so like I'm happy I like the bands I'm doing work with. Like they can get me in the pit, or they can get me, you know, just to listen to their music in my off time.
So you're doing graphic work for them?
Yeah, I started doing merch. I was actually on tour with a band running their merch table.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a short tour, 4 days, but it ended in Vermont on the eclipse. So we got to see it on Lake Champlain, the water shaking and moving. I don't let myself have religious experiences, but it was the closest I think I can get.
Wow.
Yeah, and then right after that, it's a small vegan restaurant, like 25, 30 people packed in a space that should fit 5 to 10 if you're being civil about it, and my nose still hurts because I took an elbow and I went through the fucking drum set. And if I blow my nose wrong, it still hurts. And that was back in April, but that's the price of fun.
That's how this business started actually. In 2008, I was booking bands in Philadelphia.
Okay.
So I know very well, like I was telling a story the other day of like, we were doing a show at the Blockley in Philadelphia. It's now closed since then, but it was, the band, I think they blew the tires on the trailer, and I just happened to have friends in an apartment, and we like flooded their apartment and had all the band. It was like 2 different bands, and I like woke up the next day and everybody spread. Like that was the type of stuff we all did. Was like just like we'd all go to the same place and do like those circuits where you run like the Mid-Atlantic region or like run those small little regional circuits, and that was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, do the multi-day weeks and stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's 100% worth it, and it's reasonable.
Yep.
Like, because there's very little chance you'll be an arena band or whatever, but like
it's a volume game at that point. Like get as many shows in as possible.
Yeah, as many shows, and like also it's like, look, a lot of people like getting, especially nowadays with like the internet and how distant people can be from things. Say you have 25, 30 people in a room, and 20 of them are going off. They're enjoying the music. They come to multiple shows. That's better than a lot of people will ever do in their life.
You bring up a really great point, and it's like something that a lot of people I've heard about talk a long time ago, and I see a lot more conversations about it. Where I was just in a conversation earlier today with a local musician named Chill Moody. He's like a hip hop artist out of Philly. We had a meeting this morning, and we talked a little bit about venue spaces and how in this area it's one of those things too where. You can either, like as a musician or anything like that, you can start out at playing the corner of the bar where like 80% of people don't pay attention to you because you're white noise, or you have to go to a huge venue. There used to be like a lot of smaller venues and stuff. And I
would say there's a decent amount, so I'm not super involved in the house show scene, but
the house show scene, has that grown a lot?
Yeah, so there's a lot, especially around University City. I was actually just down at one like a block away from like Kensington, like Allegheny train station coming in. Awesome place. I think it's Cambria House. Awesome space, but that's one I've really enjoyed. There's Photo Club up in North Philly. That's where my back still twinges from getting slammed into the bar. And then the biggest shout out I can give is there's the Polish Club up in Phoenixville.
Nice.
Old school, the hardcore guy used to like tour with bands and stuff, and him and this other guy Kevin. Kevin books like all the old shows and stuff there, and it's honestly like that venue in particular like holds a special place in my heart because I first went there going 2 years back. And I don't know, I've been going. I try to make every show I can.
It's one of those things when you connect with a venue and then have that sort of vibe where when you play or you're showing your art or anything like that, and you can capture 80% of the audience. Like when we were booking stuff, it got to the point where it was an expectation, and we used to like make an announcement at the beginning. We're like, hey, like everybody's here to like listen to music, so like we're not telling you to not talk, but like everybody's here to listen to music. And it became like the thing where people knew like when that show, that series or that promotional agency, when we were doing stuff, they saw our logo and they let people, it took about a couple months. But then we got to the point where like we were in like little like rural Pennsylvania bars in the back corner, and I was literally moving the tables out of the way, and people were coming in the door, and it was like 50, 75, 100 people, and they're like all focused on the band. And all these bands, and I have bands that were like from New York, from Boston, from all these places that were coming in, and they all were like, your venues are the smallest, but the most fun like types of things, because they're like, we actually come in and have an engaged audience. And I'm excited to hear that like that stuff's coming back, because not to mention just from the graphic design and artist community, but from musicians, as well as the bars and restaurants, they all need to realize that like music can bring people back into the place, because that industry, that's another line of work I'm in, is the alcohol industry, and those bars and restaurants are struggling to get people to come in and stay, and like you said, socialize and engage with each other, because everybody's on their phones or they're just grabbing takeout or whatever else. And like you said, it's like we can bring back that it's not nostalgic, it's just something that went away during COVID, and it should come back, which is more places having live music in their venues.
It should come back, because it's way better than spending hours and hours on your phone. You just end up going nowhere with things.
And people, if people are coming in to listen to music, they're not going to have their phones out, and they're going to stay longer, and they're going to spend money, they're going to have a couple drinks and have dinner and spend time with their friends and have a memory and make a core experience. So I'm excited to hear that stuff's coming back. So When we come back to your area and stuff like that, so in the past year, I'm not saying what have you done, but what type of avenues have you gone through in the past year to get your business out there? Or to get your name and brand out there as far as what you're doing?
So a lot of it showing up places and just sitting.
So you're doing like gallery shows and stuff?
Yeah, so I try to make it out to, this is my most consistent gallery location. I've been in one for Fairman's when it was still open, and then I believe 4 here. My biggest avenue has really been going to shows and concerts, talking with bands and stuff. Funnily enough, like, first band I started working for, I met the vocalist at Look Around.
Okay, nice.
Randomly.
Very cool.
Yeah. But we realized we had a friend in common and got to talking. And then besides that, it's kind of, I just show up, start drawing, and try to have my portfolio on me. And then if someone takes interest, you know, I'll be like, hey, you want to check out the rest of my stuff? And then from there, I don't know, that's how I've pretty much done it. I've done a bit of TikTok, a bit of Instagram, but I don't know, I don't like put too much value on digital stuff. So like, I mean, obviously if it becomes like a valuable avenue, like I've sold some prints on there, I'll pursue it, but I'd much rather go for the direct in person.
That, I think maybe my suggestion for a strategy on TikTok for yours, because of the style that you have, I think people would enjoy watching your process.
Oh,
if you do process videos where you just leave it on and then fast forward it, I can only imagine that people would be watching that crazy.
That, and people already like, because I draw to music a ton.
Oh,
for
nice.
me, there's been some people, like, especially on that big piece, because that one took 150 hours.
Wow.
They call it channeling or whatever.
Yep.
I don't. It's a very specific process for me. But like following the music and a lot of the line work comes.
That's what that big piece was.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Walk me through that process.
What, that?
The channeling process, yeah.
So
that is fascinating. I'm all about sensory experiences. So
yeah. So for me, it's a very specific, like, then it's, I try to find, a lot of times I'm trying to create a character out of someone I know in life, that I've heard their story, I know their experiences. A lot of times, a lot of like the weird mutations and mechanicals come out of like what I know a person has been through, either physically or mentally. And then from there, I kind of brutalize myself with my music, in the sense that it's about keeping myself in a very locked in emotional state, and I'll go 8 to 10 hours in a session, no problem, if I have the time, and I just keep myself locked in, and if I notice myself slipping, I'll do some push-ups, or I'll smoke a cigarette, or usually don't go for a walk. I like to, it has to stay inside the session. But that's pretty much it. Yeah, I set the conditions. I try to make sure I've done something physically active that day, so on some level I have like an endorphin, balance on things. And then from there, it's just going with whatever music I feel like, and and just following it, going with it. And sometimes I'll intentionally set a playlist, but a lot of times, like, it just kind of spins out as I go along. And whatever music list I'm listening to, since a piece can take, like my average, like say like 8x11 or slightly larger, takes around 36 hours.
Wow.
So a lot of times I'll get the chance to, I work contracting right now, so I have a somewhat freer schedule. So a lot of times I do get the chance for like an 8-10 hour session. But a lot of times it'll be, a 4-hour session, a 2-hour session, just whatever time I get to make progress, and whatever moods I'm in, whatever music I'm in, I feel like comes through on some level on the piece.
Now, when you're in that process on a physical level, are you in the channeling style that you leave the pencil touching the paper the entire time, and that's where it flows, or do you break off and?
Oh, I break off. I jump. I follow. Like.
You know the one I'm talking about, where they don't.
The fully. Yeah, no, that I haven't. I might try that eventually, but I use I start with very fine 0.3 pens, or for a longest time 0.25 millimeter pens. But because of that, and also because of the way I hold my pen, I actually work in a lot of shorter motions, and so from there it's more about balancing and building up the smaller motions than any like one large.
Is that the red one you're talking about that we had?
Oh yeah. So some things I won't go too much into detail.
Right.
But so this was 150 hours. I did this back, I think it was January or February. It was for the Red Show here. And there's a band I love. The vocalist, his lyrics are, he has 3 different bands, and each of the bands like captured an emotional state that I can most closely relate to compared to a lot of other lyrics. You know, a lot of, especially since I like hardcore metal, this or that. I'm not that angry. No, I'm not that dramatic. But there's a lot that process. It started out with the basics. It's based off of this song, as I was mentioning. The lyricist is Patrick Kinlan. The name of the song is "I Can't Be Relied Upon to Suck the Cocks of Cowards with No Soul."
Nice.
And so going from there, on some level, like I relate to all the different elements. I don't know, like. The biggest thing for me is, you know, this in a lot of ways is I grew up a pastor's kid, and while my parents aren't the most fundamental, in a lot of ways they're progressive individuals, wonderful people, really understanding. I grew up around a lot of fundamentalist ones and latched onto that as a kid. You know, you especially when you involve God. I'm Asperger's, so I already have black and white thinking. If I'm not careful and monitoring how I respond to things, you combine that together, and you get a very, you know, self-inflicting form of things. And for me, like, God was very much real, no question, no doubt, from a young age, because, you know, I literally grew up in an apartment that you'd have to walk through the church to get out of. So like from the earliest time I can remember, it's real.
Yeah.
I grew up at a church in the Bronx with people falling down to the Holy Spirit, talking and speaking in tongues, you know, fire tunnels, which is entire congregation line up and like hold hands, and then you go underneath them, and then everyone is praying. But nonetheless, I don't want to become what I like disliked about how I took faith.
Yep.
You know, even if I don't have a straight up belief anymore, especially after different experiences. But at the same time, I still see it's a lot better than a lot of the alternatives. And if it works for you and you're doing good for your family, you're doing this, you're doing that, like in case of my parents, you know, I don't want to see them lose that faith, you know, because it holds a tremendous place in their heart and who they are. And so, like, it's not for me to deny to anyone else.
Exactly. Although I'm not of any religious infrastructure anymore, I grew up Catholic and have a lot of family members that are Irish Catholic and things like that. And the same exact thing. It's like, to each his own, and we all find our path at the end of the day. Mine's very much of be good to people, and it's at the end of the day, that's everybody's path. So we just kind of stick to the same one.
But
we'll go back to the dark expression where you need to get back into this.
The chorus lyric is, "I failed to see the appeal of being born again. Warmth of the womb I adored, but not the sharp drop at the end." For me, that, I don't know, in a lot of ways it's kind of simple, but for me it directly states that feeling of leaving faith, going into the real world. In some ways I grew sheltered, in other ways I dealt with a whole bunch of different things. But it's the delivery in the song and the expression of it is the closest I can feel, is because it's like in the process of doing all this reflection to make this happen, the car accidents, the mess ups with women, the, you know, this or that, the won't go into the whole there's a level of anxiety and doubt and confusion that builds up that, like, there's nights, especially during this, or heck, even now, it's like, I wish I could believe in a God. It'd be nice to have that comfort, that solace, that, you know, that idea of, like, you know, things are just gonna work out someday.
That's an interesting point that I think a lot of people don't, when they take a lens and a perspective of defensiveness or like judgment of somebody that might not have that religious infrastructure in their weekly life or anything like that. Think about that. It's like you're choosing a path of more risk and from a psychological standpoint of of unknown and things like that. So there should be a little credit given to any of us that choose a different path when it's also one of an unknown, because you're right, there is that comfort there is that embrace, there is that community. To choose the opposite is just like what you're doing. It's actually indicative also of what you're doing in business. So you're taking things to the next level. You're going from years of this being a passion project, and like you had said, it's not going to do anybody any use, to just keeping it to yourself. And you're putting yourself out there in a whole other way. And I think those are really, I'll be honest with you, like, and I sound like an old man saying this to you, at your age, to have that kind of an evolutionary trajectory at this early of an age is really powerful for the future.
Yeah, I'm hoping it is.
It is, because as long as you keep flaming the fire, and you understand, and you seem like you're really there, and especially like to find the niche that you found into in the arts and entertainment, especially the music business, that's awesome. Because that's a whole niche that's constantly going to need.
It's a niche, and it's people I get along with. Like it turns out, like grindcore guys, stoner metal guys, hardcore guys, those are all the type of people, because a lot of them have been through some shit that I connect with, and it's not just because of the music, it's on some level our brains works similarly.
It makes communication really efficient.
Yes.
And less stressful.
Because I don't think I'm going to be pitching to a major pop label anytime soon. And I don't quite want to. If I don't want to listen to it, I don't want to listen to it.
Let's grab a couple other pieces.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Can see them.
Yeah, so that one was from, there's two, probably one line, it's on the back side, cool. Okay, so this one was from the third day of that tour I went on. We stopped at it was a reservoir in Massachusetts, like a full kind of almost nature preserve style.
Nice.
And it had this incredible pathway, asphalt standard, with about 2 to 3 feet of grass on either side, but it went out into the reservoir. So if you saw someone walking in the distance, it just looks like they're walking on the water.
Oh wow.
In any case, so I kind of hang out with whatever group I'm with, but I'm also if you spend enough time around me, eventually I just fuck off and wander. So I was on the verge of doing that.
Nothing wrong with a good walkabout.
And suddenly out of nowhere you hear AC/DC blasting. And I look behind it, it's nature preserve, quiet, don't get me wrong, love AC/DC. And this guy is jogging down the path pushing a cart. In the cart he has an adult disabled son, either a type of palsy or degenerative disease. So the kid's, arms crossed, he probably can't do much. But there's just this huge smile on his face. His dad is pushing him, jogging. He's sweating. He's got a headband on, short shorts on, AC/DC blasting. And for me, it was just such I grew up with a ton of medical issues, and just seeing, and my parents did a lot to try to help me to have a normal life and just enjoy things. And so seeing another parent doing that for a kid is, I'm not a very emotional or sentimental, or I'm pretty sentimental, but I'm not very emotional. I don't show a lot of emotion. And with that, just seeing that just kind of struck my mind. And so I kind of broke that into there, and then there was other people walking, and it was just,
I see the
entire trip was a whirl. I also got my hands on a brush pen I liked for the first time. So these two are experiments with a brush pen. And then if you flip to the other side, that was actually drawn during the eclipse, full totality, ground shaking, birds, silent.
See the photographer in there?
Yeah, and there was only one other guy who wasn't just looking at it, who was there for a reason, and that was a photographer with us. And so there's just, I think his name's Brendan. Need to catch up with him sometime and get him a copy of the print. But yeah, so that was the other piece to come out of that trip. And they were actually the first two large ones I finished in black and white.
This detail is incredible. I'm just blown away at the detail.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow.
That was immediately following that trip. This one I titled In Shelter. It's like a fantasy version of my grandparents' house. I live with them right now. Live in a basement. You know,
we're just again those details.
Thank you. And I don't know. It was actually like, if you look close enough, you can see, for my boss at the time, you can see like parts lists and stuff written out. Because this one just started out as a sketch, and I just liked the way it felt so much, and it kind of fit where I was at in life. That I just expanded and went with it. That one is of. Nah, it's all good. You're not the first person. I view that as a family.
I saw it as soon as I had it up. I was like, damn, it's upside down.
Nah, it's all right. That one's actually the courtyard over at Turkside Coffee Shop.
Okay.
I've started to become friends with the owners. Great guys, Mike and Jerry especially. But I was drawing in the courtyard one day while they were meeting with another businessman, and I don't know, I just decided to go with it. This one was actually my first large piece, just started and finished.
Now for this, like with this being not just the grayscale, like how much are they, is there like is it really an attention, I guess there's not a hard number, but like what's like a time commitment to something like this?
So that's probably easily a 90-hour piece.
Wow.
And especially because I figured out the hard way is, if I start with colors that are too bold or too strong first, it'll muddy things up, you know, and even like depending on like where I eventually develop, this one might eventually appear muddy to me, you know, like, oh, this is primitive compared to what I can do, you know, say 5 years from now, hopefully, you know, and I think anyone who is progressing, you know, shouldn't get locked in when a piece is done. You move on and keep progressing.
Tangibly feeling the amount of strokes on this is, I'm just like, I'm feeling the emotion that you put in the work in here. And it's amazing to actually touch it.
I'm glad it comes through. That one was drawn blackout drunk at one point. At least the pencil and ink work. The color work was good. It was
so if I woke up in the morning and I was like, fuck, I just did this, I might not have went sober. I'm not just kidding. No. We can joke about sobriety. But that is fucking awesome.
That was looking back, and I look at the art, and I listened to pretty much like only like the death and black metal and the hardcore, or like really sad Midwest emo. And
like Lucero and stuff like that.
Lucero, or if you move on to like I love, like, there's this new band actually, and they just released an album. If that's your style stuff, Harrison Board.
Okay, cool.
Fucking
nice.
Great.
I'll check them out.
So that was one piece. And that one actually is probably more, I spent a lot of nights throwing up during that period of life. So,
well, that makes sense. So that's you're definitely, so this was in your head when you were already not even on the hangover phase. So you already were real, you were expressing that the issue was expressing itself in certain ways. That's incredible.
Especially if
it's incredible that it was expressing itself that way. Wow.
And it's something, especially as you get more distance, there's that piece or other pieces that strike a gut chord, because a lot of I can struggle to identify what my emotions are or admit them to myself a lot of times. And so like it'll only be going back later that I'll be like, no, that's what that was about. That's what that was about.
Wow.
That one is my most recent finished large piece. This was probably, I think it was around a month and a half ago. And this is kind of like call it, I guess, for lack of like fancier words or not want to be too wordy with it, kind of envisioning myself in 5 years if I didn't change trajectory. I don't know, I love last guy I was working with for contracting, but work started getting slow. This got started about halfway through, about like a month without like steady work, a month and a half. And don't get me wrong, I'd love to be doing full art full time someday, but right now I do gotta pay the bills. I gotta, and I'll work as hard as I need to do that. I'll work till I'm shaking, or like there was a stretch I was working 10-hour days, driving an hour each way, then 4 hours or wake up and repeat the next day,
Yeah.
you know, and that wears you down. And I'll do it again if I have to, if
Right.
I need to. But this was kind of a real state, like this is me in 5 years. If eventually I do need to get out of contracting and manual labor, it'll start breaking down my body. I already got wrists that lock up, knees that are kind of shot, apparently bone spurs in my back. But this is like the kind of full extent of that, you know, and then I want to mess around with color.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I want to do some. I'll do some photos of you with the art and stuff like that. But as we'll close out of this, kind of give everybody kind of where to find you on Instagram and kind of and the name and kind of any other obviously look around coming up and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I don't have anything set up for look around yet, though. I'm hoping to run a print table, and I'm planning on tomorrow going to start getting involved with some of the other artists that are working on it. Instagram, you can find me on Blunt Force Trauma Inc. Underscores between each word, and then on TikTok, Blunt Force Trauma Inc. If you want to just look at me, my hand drawing to whatever music I have on at the time. But yeah.
Awesome, man. Dude, thank you so much, man. Can I give you a hug, man?
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate it. If you're an aspiring entrepreneur or one that's looking to expand, contact the FreeMind Network today and we'll help you scale, we'll help you start. We're going to be there for you in your corner.